Hi, welcome along. It's Kenton here with quite a long painting video this week. If it's the first time you've been to this channel, my name's Kenton. The channel's Northumberland Art. Welcome along. As you can see, I'm in the studio today. So the idea with this painting is I wanted to try and capture the feeling of the wind, and that's quite a difficult sort of thing to do because quite often if you're working off a photograph, which I am with this one, you're working off a static photograph. So I wanted to try and create that feeling of movement. So I'm working on basically an A3 sheet of canvas paper. I've started off by just applying a tonal underpainting in raw sienna, starting just to build up with some of the shapes. I'm working off a photograph that I took. There's the photograph there. I'm always attracted to these lone trees. I always think they make a fantastic either photography or painting subject. So that's what I wanted to try and capture. I've made a few little artistic changes. I've taken a little bit of an artistic license with this one. The original photograph was pretty much a horizontal line, so I wanted just to create a little bit of a sort of a slope to the scene. So to start with, what I'm doing is just using that photo reference, and I'm not following it exactly. I'm making a few tweaks and changes, just getting in the lights and the darks at first. Like I say, I wanted to try and keep a lot of it in real time. I think the whole painting probably took just over an hour maybe to do, but I have speeded up some of the processes. So what I'm doing is just keep referring back to that photograph and having a look at where the shapes are. On that particular day, there were some sheep sheltering by the wall, and they disappeared when I took the photograph, but I've added them back in for the final painting. Once the underpainting is all dry, then I'm starting to put in my first pass. So I'm using acrylics. I'm actually painting everything with this brush here. Don't know if you can see that. It's just a very cheap little hog hair brush, and that is giving me the feeling that I want. I want to see the brush marks and the brush strokes. I've also applied a little bit of fluid retarder to the paper before putting the paint on, just to prolong the drying time. Let's speed things up a little bit rather than you watch me deliberate every single brush mark, but I just thought I'd include a few of the decisions that I make when I'm making this, just to sort of see the process that goes in. And yeah, it's just a case of building it up. The original photograph, I did darken the foreground a little bit just to give a little bit of extra contrast, so I've continued that with this painting as well. Next, I wanted just to add a little bit of texture and just put some marks in while everything was still wet. So I'm just using a plastic blank credit card just to put some scratches in the paint while it's still wet, just to sort of give me a little indication of where I want to go and pick out some highlights and where some of the texture is going to be. Most of these marks probably don't show through at the end, but it's just part of my process. I've mentioned in a previous video how I feel that painting is a little bit like sculpting. So when the paint's wet and you can still move it around a little bit, it does help me to visualize where I'm going to be going with the painting as it progresses. quick dry with the hairdryer just to make sure everything's dry, and then another quick spritz with water just to wet everything down again. And now I'm going in for the final painting layer and working fairly quickly. This is speeded up a little bit just so that you don't nod off while you're watching it, but you can sort of see the processes that I'm using to try and create this nice blend for the windswept sky. I've obviously put the finished painting up in the top right hand corner there so you can see where I'm working, and you can also sort of see some of the marks that I put in the initial stages don't make it through to the final painting, but even some of the underpainting marks that I put in, even if they're wrong, I've said this before, it still gives you a little guide as to where you want to go with the finished painting. So because I wanted the sky to be showing through from the trunks of the bottom of the tree, I've painted the sky in, and I'll go back and finish off those trunks and the branches for the tree. And when everything is all in, all the colors are in, then I'm just using my finger to blend everything in. I could use a clean brush, but it sometimes leaves sort of brush marks in. So for the effect that I wanted with this one, I just used my finger just to blend everything in. So when I was happy with the sky, it's time to start working on the tree. Again, I'm still using this 1/2 inch hog hair brush just to get the first pass into this tree, and I know that I'm going to be putting in some little sky holes in between the branches, but it just helps to create that feeling of movement. Let us know in the comments below whether you think I've captured this windy scene. It's a fairly loose and impressionistic painting. I'm not a big fan of realism. In fact, dare say I haven't got the talent or the patience to do any form of hyperrealism, so I kind of just paint on intuition, just see how it goes. I actually did another version of this at first, which I worked just purely from memory. It didn't come out anywhere near what I wanted it to, so I decided to go and get the photo reference, because that always helps, and it really does make a difference when, even though you think you know what a tree looks like and you can remember the scene fairly well, just looking at that photo reference just helps just to see where the branches go, and it's just a little reminder of where you need to put the brush marks. So eventually I do have to move away from this 1/2 inch brush, and I'm using a natural hair rigger brush just to put in some of these branch details. One thing, when you look at the photo reference, you always get these little twigs and sticks and branches sort of poking above the foliage line, so I've added those in as well. And as I'm putting those in, I'm thinking of the shape of the tree and where the air holes, or the sky holes. I always call them air holes. Where the sky holes are going to go in. So I'm using the rigger brush again just to put the sky holes in, and just use my finger just to smudge them out a little bit. Because the branches are moving, I just want to create that feeling of a slight blur and a slight bit of movement to it. Once the tree was all in, then it was time to start working on this foreground with the grass. And again, I'm thinking about the wind coming from the right direction, so I think that would be going that way, because this video gets flipped for some reason. And I'm including the dark in the very foreground, because I know that I'm going to be putting some lighter brush strokes over the top of that, which will pick them out nicely. As you can see, I've just taped the corners of this piece of canvas paper. This is acrylic paper designed just for acrylic paints, so you can paint directly on it. It's got a slight texture and the slight impression of a canvas, and I remove those little bits of tape at the bottom so that I can get that colour in. And then once everything starts drying, the paper, when it's very wet, it does move a little bit. Sometimes I have to just stretch the paper again across, but as it starts to dry, everything goes nice and flat. So I enjoyed this bit with the again using this 1/2 inch brush, just putting these strokes in. Looking back at the video playback of this, I could have possibly left it even looser without putting the details in, because I think the grass and the shadow really did sort of capture the feeling of movement, but I do work it a little bit further. finally, just to finish off, I'm using a fan brush. This is again a hog hair fan brush. So there's only 3 brushes been involved in this painting, and this brush just makes a really nice mark for what I'm looking for the dried grass heads. I'm using the brush in the direction of the wind just to create the feeling of movement in the painting. So thanks for watching that. Hope you made it through to the end, and thanks for indulging me on this slightly longer format video because it's a little bit of a more complicated scene. I decided to include a little bit more of the process. In fact, pretty much the only bit that I forgot to record was putting the sheep in. I know when I was first starting to paint many years ago, I used to enjoy watching painting videos and seeing the process of how something evolves into a finished painting. To finish off, I'm just using the little credit card again just to put a little bit of detail along the top of the wall, and just to create a little bit of a feeling of chaos and movement. I wanted to add a few little splatters, so I've masked off the top half of the painting so it doesn't get covered in beige coloured splats. Thanks again ever so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and found it reasonably entertaining. If you did, you know what to do. Hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.